r/AskReddit. Serious, what is your scariest true story? I'm 52. When I was about 8 years old, 5 other 8 to 10-year-olds were in a kid's bedroom playing. This one boy and me were wrestling around when someone turned off the lights. When the light went off, there was a loud pop. Another kid had found a pistol and fired it. I was laying on the bedroom floor. The bullet missed my head by 2 inches. It was a straight down shot that narrowly missed. Me and my fiance saw a guy on the side of the road asking for a ride. I told her there was no way in duck I'd pick up a male hitchhiker. She told me it was the right thing to do, but I convinced her that we shouldn't. 3 days later he was arrested for murdering the couple that picked him up. Many years ago, when I was in high school, I was staying up late playing video games. Parents were out, but no big deal. Being home alone didn't scare me. So I'm playing the game, and at around 3 AM, my parents finally arrive. This in itself wasn't unusual, but based off their demeanor, something had happened. My dad told me that on their way back from their friend's house a far drive away, he had noticed they were being followed. My mom had no idea, but my dad, being the driver, was aware of this car that had followed them from about halfway back. Our house was in the suburbs, and thus, getting to our house involved a few turns and whatnot. My dad purposely drove past our house without stopping, which is when my mom asked what he was doing. Sure enough, the car continuously followed my parents through the neighborhood. My dad ended up driving to the police station, which is when the car turned away and stopped following them. It's scary to think what could have been had my dad not had the presence of mind to be aware of his surroundings as a driver and to act on his intuition. My parents would have opened the garage door to put the car in, and the idea that a car whose occupant or occupants likely had a malicious intent was right behind them is a thought that still bothers me to this day. Because of that past incident, I learned to always mind my surroundings when driving. 10 years ago, I was 18 years old. As I was taking a shower and washed my hair, with every washing motion I pulled out more and more of my own hair until I was bald. No reason, no warning, nothing. Just the pure horror of pulling out hands full of hair. The drain clogged with my hair as I silently stared in the mirror across the room at my own bald head. It felt like I was falling apart, mentally and physically. I honestly thought I would die that day. It was sudden autoimmune disease. Alopecia overnight. It was scary as hell. The weeks after, I lost all my body hair as well. My hair never returned, and I'm very okay with it now, but I can never ever forget that moment in the shower. When I was 15 to 16, my mom put me on diet pills, still don't know what they are, that let me get away with just eating a tiny cup of soup the whole day and be okay with sleeping less than 3 hours daily. I got hooked on them because I could study way more. I guess the sleep deprivation finally caught up one night, and I started having auditory hallucinations. It started with white noise, then morphed into what sounded like a garbled shouting argument between a bunch of people, and started echoing, until it became a man with a deep, sinister laugh laughing hysterically. The rational part of me figured it's auditory hallucinations, but holy crap, it was petrifying, and I could feel every hair standing up. Then another part of me just thought, well, if it's not a hallucination, and I'm actually going to get murdered by bloodthirsty ghosts, at least I don't have to take the test tomorrow. I continued studying. Asian schools were tough. Working with a serial killer who was arrested by a SWAT team moments after we were in the same lab together. He had a gun on him at the time. Saw a guy get his throat cut. I was quite young and there were a bunch of middle school kids fighting, then one pulled out a knife and slit the other's throat. Blood was gushing out, and that scene was kinda branded in my mind. I just posted this in another thread, but thought I'd go into detail. Someone broke into my house today and made himself a plate of food, took a shower, and put on my father-in-law's clothes, and even switched my laundry. Me and my girlfriend walked in on him sitting by the front door. My GF's father knows a lot of people, and he was wearing my GF's father's work shirt, so we just assumed he knew him. He asked us if we believed in God, and told us the church sent him. We ran out immediately and called 911. He did not chase us fast at all. He calmly walked out the door as we drove away. While on the phone, we watched him hop 2 fences very calmly. He saw the cop coming down the road. He came in literally 1:30, thank God, and ditched the shirt. We didn't know if we had locked our gun cabinet, so we didn't know if he was armed. The cop jumped out and detained him, and he calmly went to the ground. He destroyed the house, but didn't take anything. He ruined my GF's parents' bathroom door, like he got stuck inside the bathroom. He tore the tile in our room. He made a pile of what he was gonna take, but didn't even run when we caught him. My girlfriend is very shook up, because this guy must have been here while we were, because we were only gone for 45 minutes. The timing of when we got home was so perfect. My GF accidentally honked the horn when we pulled up, notifying him that we were home. Normally we walk in the house and go straight to our room, and we would not have noticed him if he was still in the shower or in the kitchen. He has previous charges of battery with a deadly weapon. Thank God we got lucky. He was definitely watching the house to know our very predictable leaving patterns. Drugs are a crazy thing. When I was 8 and my brother 6, my mom picked us up from school one day. When we got home, my mom had forgotten her keys, so she knocked on the door for my grandma to let us in. Now architecture is super important to the story. We lived in a very well-to-do apartment building on the 8th floor, where each floor was a long rectangle with a single apt on each end, so 2 apartments per floor. In the middle of the rectangle of each floor, there was a single elevator. The building was essentially all glass. There were no external fire staircases or ladders, and the nearest structure was another building an entire block away. Okay, so we knock on the door. My grandma yells from the inside, "Incoming." So we wait. And we wait 1 minute, nothing. So we knock again. Again, my grandma. I said, "I'm coming." 3 minutes, then 5. She still isn't opening the door, even though we can clearly hear her in the kitchen inside the house. So we are getting pissed. We knock and she just keeps on saying the same thing. I said, "I'm coming. I'm coming right now." 10 minutes later, the elevator opens behind us, and out comes my grandma. The apartment had been empty the entire time. It's been 20 years since then, and my mom, brother, and I all clearly remember talking to that voice that sounded exactly like my grandma. Zero explanation. My grandma is still alive, by the way. This happened while living at my parents' house about 10 years ago. My whole family, brother, sister, and parents were at a Major League Baseball game. It was a night game, and being baseball, it ran a little later into the night. I was working as a lifeguard in high school and would get off around 9 PM usually. The pool was super close to my parents, so I could get home within minutes. Well, I finally get home and get a shower, and I'm trying to be quick about everything because there was a party that night that someone from work was throwing. I'm getting out of the shower and walk into my room and hear all this shuffling and running downstairs. So I yell hello, thinking it's my parents. I then yell, "Mom, Dad." Again to no avail, and hear the running of footsteps downstairs, and next thing I know I hear our garage opening up. You could just manually lift the door at the time because a garage door opener was broken. Anyways, that kinda freaked me the hell out because literally no one was home except for me. I ran across the street and got my neighbor and her son, and I walked through my house with a samurai sword because I was afraid whatever was in there was still there. The neighbor ended up calling the police. When we did another walkthrough, we found that my dad had about $200 to $300 cash stolen. My mom's diamond rings and earrings were all stolen, and there was a set of earrings lying on the bedroom floor with the jewelry box lid askew. What happened was my parents' house was in the process of getting robbed while I came home. I was in the house with the intruders for some time before they realized I was home and heard the shower running and me starting to yell for my parents, which startled them and made them make a run for it, hence the footsteps and shuffling I was hearing, and the escape route was through the broken garage door, which they must have scouted out about our house for some time. The cop said that was the 3rd break-in on our area within the past week, and they have been on the lookout for suspicious people without tipping off the public. Will she? Probably one of the scariest things I've had happen to me though. The moment I realized my parents weren't home and someone else was in the house with me was a terrible gut-wrenching feeling. I was about 9, laying in bed watching snow fall out of a window that faced the backyard. Suddenly a man's face popped up just inches from my window, staring right at me. I still remember his beard coated in ice and his steamy breath. After a few seconds I unfroze and ran into my mum's room. She thought I was making it up and sent me back to my room. I hid so I couldn't see out of the window. The next morning, when we left for school, there were footprints in the fresh snow that straight went back to my window. My sister went to a nail salon that used the utmost in care and sterilization. They even used a plastic liner for the foot tub. She got a massive staph infection on her leg, and after living with an actual hole in her leg the size of a grapefruit, it's starting to look somewhat normal 2 years later. She has nerve damage in her leg and foot, though, and the infection nearly killed her. You can be so very clean, but still get staph. It is no joke. You do not want to mess with it. When I was 16, my grandparents hired me to house sit for 3 weeks at their farm, housed in a small town. It was the second to last night of my stay and all had gone well for a 16-year-old completely alone in a big empty house for 3 weeks. It was about 1 AM and it started to thunderstorm outside, so I decided to turn everything off and go to bed. I was upstairs in the front bedroom that overlooks their driveway, using the toilet, when I heard a loud noise outside that sounded similar to a tractor or riding mower. Now this isn't completely unusual as my uncle lives down the street, and he is who did the lawn care for their house. But at 1 AM during a storm it was quite odd. I heard the side door to the house open, and could hear my uncle's work boot center below me. I thought maybe he was there to help out in case of a power outage. What really got to me though was the fact that the 3 German shepherds were laying at the foot of the bed, completely unaware, which is not like them at all. Those dogs go wild at a leaf falling to the ground 15 feet away. So I go to the window and look out at the driveway. No cars, no tractor, nothing. No one is out there. All of a sudden the stomping intensifies, and I start to hear what sounds as if someone is banging a broom on the ceiling below me. Now the dogs start going wild, and I'm in full panic mode. The thunderstorm outside is intensifying, the stomping and banging on the ceiling is getting louder and the dogs are going berserk. Instantaneously, the power goes out and everything stops. The dogs, the stomping, the banging, everything. The room I'm in is pitch black for about 5 full minutes and I hid under the covers trying to call my uncle in a sheer panic. After that, everything was as if nothing happened, and the storm passed shortly after. Was the scariest and weirdest night ever. I grew up in a farmhouse, built in the 1860s. I was probably 14 or so, and was home alone, while my parents took my little brother to t-ball practice. My little brother did, and still does, call me Sissy, and I have always called him Bubby. I was sitting in the living room watching TV, and heard the back door that we always use open and my little brother shout out Sissy, and I responded back with hey Bubby. I waited a minute or two, and heard nothing else, then yelled out again with no response. As it turns out, they hadn't gotten home yet. I was literally too scared to move, and stayed put till they did get home about 30 minutes later. When I was 8 and alone in my room I felt like someone was there with me, watching. I was terrified, so I said wanna play, and then one of my toys flew out of the shelf, and landed right at my feet. Never called mom louder. When I was a little kid I had a reoccurring nightmare almost weekly. I would be in the basement, and would hear a meow. I would search for the source in the dark, and find it a sunken window at eye level with a little bit of filtered light. Lying in it would be a dead grey cat with empty eye sockets fixed on me, giving a mournful shriek. Sometimes the red light would open in the eye, and everyone I loved would die. I would wake up at various stages of this nightmare. It got so bad one summer, that I slept with the lights on all night. Every time I heard a cat, I was afraid it was the eyeless grey one from the nightmare. Fast forward 25 years later, and I'm buying my first home with my wife. It doesn't have central air, so we sleep downstairs in the basement for the summer. We have one of those sunken windows. One night the first week there we wake up to the sound of a cat meowing, and furiously trying to get into the bedroom through the sunken window. In the filtered light I see a grey cat, and I see an empty eye socket staring back at me. We've slept upstairs since. But, in a twist, the cat is lovely. His name is Lau, and he runs beside me when I go for a jog. He also plays with our new Australian Shepherd puppy. Most social cat I've ever seen. Used to live in a house in a quiet neighborhood. I'd often stay up late in the living room, which had a fairly large glass door to the backyard that you could slide open with no curtain. Sometimes I'd hear noises in the backyard, but it'd usually be my cats. Sometimes the motion sensing porch light would turn on, but again I figured it was some nighttime critter. One day after a night of snow I noticed a fresh set of shoe prints that stopped dead right in front of that glass door. Someone had obviously been there at some point in the night. Another time I noticed the glass door's lock was slightly tampered with. I'm actually freaking myself out writing all of this, because at the time I figured it was just a one-time thing, but in reality this person could have been making repeat visits anytime he wanted before and after that snow day. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.